All right, so this week will probably be I don't know, maybe the most challenging of this project. And it's the part of the project that's like making the mold. So, we'll probably make this the last part of class because then the handle, I guess, is just repeating the last two classes. So it's just repeating the steps that we did for making the body of our structure, and then today making the mold. You know, this class is out of the makerspace, right? So we want to like make things physically, and in order to make this physically, we need a mold. So we'll finish up with making the mold for this overmold for our body here, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I'm going to go to my Rainmaker document here, and I've got my body active. Let me go ahead and change this. This is for prep. So that was just what I was making, doing a little test there. I always tend to, do things a little bit differently, try to make things a little bit better because I end up making 3 or 4 of these drawings as we go. I do one for myself to kind of work things out and figure out a design, and then I do one that's like, all right, can I do this start to finish a little faster? And then the one I do for class here, and I end up making refinements along the way. And the refinement I wanted to make, most of the refinement I wanted to make was to the mold part. So we're going to kind of dive in here. I'm going to start by making a new component. And I leave it up to you, your organization, if you want to make this new component. In fact, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this component inside of my body component. So the mold that I'm making here is going to live inside of my body component. I guess that makes sense to me. Also, we're going to be using parts of this body in order to make our mold. So we're going to make it inside of this body component. So I've got my body as my active component here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Create and then New Component. So this is going to be our mold. It's going to be the body mold. And it's going to be all the pieces that fit on the outside of this that we inject in our rubber into here. So we'll make it our active component. I've got my body as the selected parent here, so it's already selected there, so I can go ahead and say OK. All right, so now we've got our body mold highlighted here, and the first thing we need to do is we need to use the surface body that we use to create all of the other parts of our tool. And in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and need to make our body. Actually, I wonder if we can just spin this down. Yeah, so my body mold is still my active component, but I've spun down or spun open the bodies folder in my body component just so I can see this surface body. This surface body is the body we had been using to make all the other parts of our tool here, and we're going to do that same operation here. So with my body mold, my active component, I'm going to switch to the surface creation workspace here, and from the create menu I'm going to go ahead and choose our favorite command from this surface workspace, the one we've been using a lot, this Thicken command. And as the face is that I'm going to thicken, I'm just going to choose the main body surface from our body mold here. And what that'll do is that'll use that to make a new body inside of our body mold component, if that makes sense. And we want to make this the thickest one yet. So 1/4 of an inch works for me. Quarter of an inch will expand. Oh, errors. I did it the first time. I made a quarter of an inch, no problem the first time. Oh, because I'm accidentally doing it symmetrically. All right, one side. All right, so I made a quarter of an inch, and that, what we want to make sure you're doing here is you're fully encompassing all of the parts. You want your tool to live inside of this body. So here, if I make this 0.2 inches, you can see I've got parts that are poking out here. The detail part of my overmold is poking out. So I need to make it just thicker than that. Doesn't need to be a lot thicker, but just a little bit thicker. So a quarter of an inch worked good for me. And then I'm going to say OK. All right, so now we're probably not going to need that body anymore. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not going to need the body's folder inside of this body, but we're kind of, our component, our body mold component is inside of this body component here, so we will need that. All right. So the next step that I'm going to do here is we need to make this mold so we can separate it into pieces. It needs to be made of probably 4 or 6 different pieces that get fastened together, and then the rubber gets injected inside of it. And in order to fasten it, we're going to need like wings, I guess you could say. Flanges is probably a better word, in order to fasten the parts together in. And we're also going to need to split up this body. So let's start by doing that. Let's make our flanges first. So I'd like to have a flange that's associated with each of the 4 kind of corners of my tool here. So if we can imagine kind of like an X here, and I'll have flanges that are associated with each one of these corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create an axis. So I want to have an axis that goes from this point here all the way to this point back here, just because those 2 points kind of represent one of those kind of X's that we're going to be making, one of the wings of the X's. So if I come up to the construct menu, we can choose an axis through 2 points. And if we choose this axis through 2 points, and then select a point at the front, and then a point to the back. Again, I'm kind of imagining this as like a 4-part mold here when it comes to like the top, sides, bottom, and the other side here. So we kind of want to divide it up like that. So I've got an axis that goes through from front to back here. And now from this axis, I'm going to use this axis to make a plane at an angle. It's kind of a long walk here to make this flange, but as we keep going, you'll kind of see the process unfold here, hopefully. So from that axis, I'm going to make a plane at an angle. So in the construct menu, I'll choose plane at an angle. I'll specify that axis as the angle, as the line that I want to make my angled plane based off of. And now I'm going to spin this around to 45 degrees. And we want it to be a 45 degrees like this, as opposed to a 45 degrees like this. So this is negative 45 degrees for me, but depending on which side and which how your model is oriented, it could be a negative 45 is the right answer for you. But we want it to be a plane that doesn't cut through the center of our tool. It kind of runs tangent to it. And I'm going to say OK here. And this has been a long walk, but we need to make one more plane. and that's going to be an offset plane from this plane. So, you know, sometimes I like to make these planes reflect the things that are going to be on them. So you can always hover over the side of this plane, and you can shrink it in or out. Again, this is like just a purely visual representation. These planes go on infinitely, but it's nice to keep things visually organized and not have giant planes for things that are real tiny. All right, so from the last plane that we need to make here is a construction plane that is an offset plane. And we're going to offset it from that plane that we just made 1 inch. Now, 1 inch is good for me because I don't have any like really big bulbous areas that are kind of encroaching way out here. So if your shape has areas that encroach and get bulbous out towards the edge here, we want to have some meat, like this shortest distance here between this plane and our tool is going to be the shortest flange that we're able to kind of clamp to. So if your plane is kind of close to your body, you might want to go with more than 1 inch. But 1 inch seems good for me. And then I'm going to say OK. Now, finally, we can make a sketch. So on that plane that we just made, let's go ahead and create a sketch on that plane. So I'm going to, from the Create menu, choose the Create Sketch option. And then I'm going to make sure, because I've got a lot of planes going on here, that make sure that I click on the plane that is furthest away from my body as the plane that I'm creating a sketch on. And now, on this plane, I want to project this curved line. So this curved line was kind of the basis for, the basis for my axis that I made. So this curved line goes from one side of this axis to another, and it's kind of one of the 4 X's that we're going to be making here. So in order to project that line over onto this sketch that we're making, from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Project option, and then scroll over to Project. Now I'm going to hover over that little curved line there and just go ahead and highlight it and click on it one time, and you can see I'm projecting over that purple line there, and then I can say OK. I wonder if we don't need to. Let's try to roll with it like this. In my earlier sketch, in my earlier drawing, as I was kind of prepping for class here, I extended out these lines a little bit. I kind of made them go beyond the body here, but that made me run into problems later. So we're going to kind of wing it here for a second, and we might need to come back and extend those lines out, but we're gonna wing it here. So now that I've got that line projected, I can go ahead and say Finish Sketch. And now we can create our first flange. So in order to create that flange, we're going to start by extruding out this line. So in the surface workspace, you can extrude just a line. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Extrude option. You always know when you're in the surface workspace because all of your tools are orange, as opposed to in the solid workspace, all of your tools are blue. So I'll go ahead and choose this orange Extrude option from my Create menu. the object or profile that I'm going to extrude out is that weird curved line. And now I'm going to extrude this towards my body, towards my tool, I should say. And I'm just going to make sure I go inside of that tool. So this would not be far enough. I've not gone into the tool, and we want to go inside of the tool a little distance there. That excess will get cut off later, so you want to go inside of your tool mold body there. All right, and then I'm going to say OK. All right, now, just like we made our body by using the Thicken command, and we made our mold using the Thicken command, you know what, let's go ahead and name some things here. We've got a bodies folder, and this is going to be our mold. Like the one thickened body that we have is going to be our mold. And then we've got a surface body here, and I guess I'm going to name these by, I'm just going to name them 1 through 4. There are going to be 4 of these things. I guess 2 of them are going to be mirrored though. So this is, I don't know, quad 1. Anything is better than body 1, body 2. So, all right, quad 1 is fine for me. I suppose it could be flange 1. That would probably make more sense. All right, so now this body, like I said, this surface body, we're going to thicken it just like we did the other, just like we've been doing. So I'll go ahead and click on Create, and then I'll come down to this Thicken option. I'm going to choose as the face that I want to thicken. I'm going to pick the quad surface body in my bodies folder. And now, crucially, instead of thickening this in one direction, oh, and you know what? Oh, no, I did. You know, I can see I did not go far enough. All right, so I'm going to change this from one side to symmetric. And I only need to go, it only needs to be like 1/8 of an inch in each direction. I think 1/8 of an inch each direction is fine for a flange. And instead of making this a new body, I'm going to say join. So I'm going to join it to our existing body. We'll worry about cutting the whole thing up in the next step. All right, so I'm saying join, and I'm saying OK. And now we can kind of give an inspection here. And I can see that if I zoom in, it doesn't go out. I've got a little corner. I want it to be intersecting all the way around. And I've got this little corner here because I didn't extrude my flange surface body in far enough. So let me look at the back and see how we're doing. The back looks fine. So all I need to do in order to fix that is from the Create menu, down here in my timeline where I extruded this flange here, or this quad is what I called it, I just need to right-click on it and say Edit that feature. And now I can move it in just a little bit further. And now when I say OK, now I pop back into the present, and you can see that it's meeting up real nicely. Now I've got a nice corner there. All right, so let's do that to the bottom corner. We're going to do that same operation to this bottom edge down here. So first of all, let me do a little check-in. Did you follow that okay? We're making weird shape here. Cool? All right. Sort of? Okay, cool. We'll do it again in this bottom one here. And then and then maybe some of the questions that you had will get answered here. So we're going to do that same operation. So I'm going to connect the front point here with this point back here by making an axis through those 2 points, right? So from the construct menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the axis through 2 points. I'll pick the point on the front of my tool and the point on the back of my tool. I think I missed. There we go. All right, so now I've got that axis made, so I can say OK. All right, and now I can use that axis to create a plane at an angle. So I'm going to, from the construct menu, choose the plane at an angle option. I'll choose that axis there. And again, I'm going to look at the front of my tool here and spin this axis around so it is the right way. Like if I just type in 45, there we go. 45 works for me again there. But it could be a negative 45 for you. So if yours looks like this, you want to change that negative into a positive or change that positive into a negative because hey, look at this. You can do a double negative and it doesn't give you an error. That's kind of shocking. You can do negative 45 and it's the same as a positive 45. Turns out two wrongs don't make a right, but 2 negatives definitely make a positive in Fusion 360. All right. So I'm going to shrink this plane down just so it's not so obscenely large because I actually only created this plane so I could create another plane from it. So from the construct menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose that offset plane option again. The plane that I'm going to offset it from is that plane that we just made. And we want to move away from our tool. 1 inch is fine for me. In fact, 1 inch is probably overkill right now. That's way out there. You know, because it doesn't bulge up on the top, because mine kind of curves inward. I don't need to have all that flange. So I'm actually going to shrink this down so you can see the difference here. This is only a 1/2 of an inch. So I think I'm going to go with a 1/2 of an inch, but that'll be plenty of distance for a flange. And you can kind of see, based on that first one that we did, you know, what the purpose of this plane is. This plane kind of defines this outer edge. Oh, in fact, you don't want to click on stuff when you have the extrude tool open, because it's just going to go ahead and be like, oh, that surface? All right. All right, so now on that plane, we can create a sketch, right? So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose Create Sketch. I'm going to highlight that plane that I just made, the last plane that I just made. And then on this plane, we're going to project over this little arc here. So this arc is the arc that had a point at each end of the axis that I made when I was kind of starting this process. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Project Include option, and then over to Project. I'm going to highlight that curve, making sure that I just get that single curve. I don't want to get like one of the various other some of the various other geometry that I can easily accidentally click on. I'm going to make sure I just click on that one curved line. It could be that you have two, well, actually probably couldn't be that you have 2 lines, because we made this with a loft from the front to the back. I was going to say sometimes lines get broken up, but because we made it with a single loft, my guess is none of you will have to click on more than one line there. It'll just be the one line. And then I'm going to click on OK for that project menu and finish sketch. All right, so I've got, I'm going to name some sketches because we've been trying to stay organized and now I got a little bit behind. So I'm going to go with, the first one is Flange 1, and the second one is Flange 2. In fact, I like that better than quad. So I'm going to rename that first surface body that I made. I'm going to change it from quad 1 to flange 1 because they are what we are indeed using to make our flanges. So that makes more sense, I think. All right. Now, from this line, we're going to extrude it and make our flange surface. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose that Extrude option. I'm going to choose this line, this curve that I had projected over onto that plane that we made. And I'm going to move it into my body. I don't know, 1 1¼ inches or so. Again, it can go in further. It just needs to go in far enough. And we may need to do that same operation that we did the first time around when mine didn't go far enough. But I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now that I've got that flange extruded into there, I'm going to turn off that construction plane just because I think it's a eyesore. It's kind of in the way visually. And now that same thing that we did here, we're gonna use that Thicken command, our favorite command from the Create menu inside of our Surface workspace. Has definitely been this Thicken command. And we are going to thicken that surface that we just made the same amount. So one of the nice things about this Thicken command is it remembers your last specified parameters. So the thickness here is going to be symmetric and 1/8 of an inch in each direction, which I think will be fine and dandy like sour candy. And I'm going to say oakley dokley. All right, so we are getting close, believe it or not. The next step that I'd like to do here is I'd like to create these two flanges over on the other side here. So the other side of my body, thankfully my tool is symmetric, and hopefully everybody's tool is symmetric. If your tool is not symmetric, you'll have to do this over there for those other flanges. But my tool is symmetric, and I'm just going to assume yours is too. So with that being said, I think we can use the mirror command. So from the, oh, and you know what? First we need a plane to mirror across. And this is where it's going to be really helpful that we were good at naming our bodies and naming our construction planes, because I'm pretty sure that at some point we had a construction plane that cut our tool in half that we probably named. Was it with our cast tray? Was it with the roller? Gosh, I might be wrong. Maybe we haven't. I feel like I thought we did. I thought with our body maybe. Back plane, front plane, overmold. Oh, okay, good. Good job. All right. Oh, I called mine path plane. So there's a case of not naming things good. All right. So what we want to do is we're going to use whatever plane that is. For me, it's called path plane. For you, you probably named yours better. Thank you for chiming in. And so we're going to use that plane to mirror over these features that we just made. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Mirror command. Now, I want to mirror over, I think this will work. I think I did bodies, but I'm going to choose to mirror over a type that is features. And when you choose this features option, I think the best place to click on these features is down in the timeline. So I'm going to mirror the two thickens that I did. So there's a thicken there, and there's a thicken there. So the thickening of the two flanges is the feature that I'm going to mirror, and then hopefully, look at that. I think it's going to work just nicely. All right. So as the mirror plane, I'm going to choose that plane that is that we had earlier made that bisects our model right in half there. I don't think it's going to make a difference which one of these you choose. I'm going to choose identical, but again, I don't see a difference in this case between these three compute options. In fact, I've never seen a difference between those options. I'm not sure what they're for, but I'm sure they're for something. But I'm going to go ahead and choose identical, and I'm going to say OK. Oh, look, we didn't get one. One didn't work. So let me try that again. I'm going to go ahead and say mirror. Find that. I'm just going to do one at a time, I guess. Choose the path plane. It worked that time. So the first mirror, it wouldn't mirror over my body one. I had to do it a second time here. Now, when it mirrored, it did not join those. Did not join those flanges to our main mold body. So let's go ahead and do that now. So, oh, in fact, I forgot to do that for the second body that we made, but that's okay, because we're going to do that right now. If you've got more than one mold body, we're going to join them all together and make them one big happy mold family. So I'm going to jump into my solid workspace for a second here. And from the Modify menu, I'm just going to go ahead and choose to combine. The target body, the thing I want to combine the other bodies to, is going to be my mold body here. And then the tool bodies, the bodies that I'm going to add to my target, are going to be each of the flanges, one that I forgot to make join when I extruded it, and the other two are the two flanges that I got when I made my mirrored feature there. I'm not going to choose to keep the tools because I don't want to have these bodies left over after they're joined, so I'm going to that keep tools checkbox is unchecked, and I'm going to say OK. All right, so we've got our side flanges done. We need to make a front and a back flange. So let's do that next. So from my, actually, do we want to try to subtract our body out first? Let's do that. Let's instead of making our front and back flanges, no, let's make our front and back flanges. We're going to go all in here. So I'm going to create my front flange. So in order to do that, we're going to create a sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create, and then Create Sketch. I'm going to create that sketch on the front surface of my mold here. So the very front surface of my mold is a flat surface. I'm going to use that to create a sketch on. And this sketch, I want to encompass all of the side flanges. So in order to do that, I need to have some points that represent the outer points of these side flanges on this sketch. So I'm going to project those over onto this sketch from their existing geometry. So from the Create menu, I'm going to choose the Project option and then over to Project. And now the items that I'm going to project are just points. So each of the furthest out points on the front of my side flanges, I guess there's going to be 16 of them? Nope, 12 of them. Nope, 8 of them. I can do math. So it's each of the corners from the front of my side flanges, if that makes sense. And once I've got those projected, I can say OK, and I just need to connect those dots now. So I can grab my line tool, and I can just connect each one of those dots to each other all the way around the outside of my tool. So I'm encompassing my flanges and making a nice big flange at the front of my tool simultaneously. And then I'm going to say Finish Sketch. All right, now we can extrude that area. So I'm going to, from the Create menu, and now I'm back here in the Solid Model Workspace. In fact, I'm going to be back here in the Solid Model Workspace, I think, for the remainder of this class here. So I'm going to grab from my Create menu, I'm going to grab the Solid Extrude option. There's just the blue Extrude option. And this flange is going to be, gosh, it really is difficult to click on click on that body. I am going to turn off, if I turn off my bodies folder in my body component, so this bodies folder in my body component, I think it'll be easier for me to, is indeed not. I've got a distance there. So sometimes that causes issues. All right, so what if I hide all of my bodies? And now I say Extrude. No. So I think the issue that I'm having here is I've got other things that are visible, and it's like, oh, do you want to click on this? Do you want to click on this? No, I just want to click on this sketch. Thank you for asking. So I'm going to hide all of those things. I want to hide everything. I'm going to do it all at once. So there's a nice trick here. If you hover over a component, I think this works for bodies too. It might even work for sketches. It does not work for sketches, but a body or a component in your browser, if you right-click on that body or component in your browser, there is an option near the bottom that says Isolate. So what this Isolate option will do, it will turn off everything that's not that object. And now that I've got everything that's not that object hidden, I should be able to, a lot more easily click on the parts of this sketch that I actually want to extrude without it jumping around thinking I want to extrude something else. Now, I'm going to extrude this back into my shape here. I think this is the mistake I made last time in my prep for class here. And we need to go back into this shape well, it needs to be far enough that it goes into our body. I'm going to make this thicker than it needs to be. Is that right? I'm going to make this 1/2 inch because I want it to be thicker than it needs to be because I don't want to run into the problem I had before. Having a thick flange will be fine. It's worse than having a flange that's not thick enough. All right, so now that I'm done talking to myself, I'm going to make this extrude a join because I'm joining this all together here in one big happy mold family. And then I'm going to say OK. And now we want to do that same operation to the backside of our mold. So I'm going to do all those same steps that I did for the front of my mold to our back surface here. In fact, do I probably have a name, a body to name? I've got a sketch to name. This is our front flange. I can turn that off, turn off my side flange sketches. I still got a body down. No, that's the flange. All right, we should have that. All right, so I'm going to do that same operation in the back here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Create menu, choose to create a sketch. I'm going to choose to create a sketch on the back surface of my tool mold here. And that same deal. Now I can see the outer reaches of the side flanges, the two corners of the outer reaches of the side flanges that go all the way around. And from those corners, I'm going to project them over onto this sketch that I'm creating. So each one of those 8 corners from our side flanges, I need to connect those projected points after I've projected them. We're connecting those dots just with our line tool. So we've got a nice fully connected flange bit. I'm just going to kind of show you from the side what that looks like. All right, and now I am going to finish this sketch. I'll name the sketch. So this is my back flange. And now I've already got my mold body isolated, so I'm going to extrude out this shape. So it's kind of the inside and outside of that shape. And I'm going to extrude it in towards my model. Again, I'm going to go 1/2 inch, not 5 inches, 1/2 inch. If you've got a little gap up here, I think that'll be fine. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. And we're not cutting, we're joining. Joining together in one harmonious mold shape. All right, so now I'm going to say, okay, it's all joined together. I'm going to turn off or hide my back flange sketch. All right, so now we've got our mold body created here. However, the inside of this does not reflect the mold surface that we want the inside of our mold to have. So, namely, the inside of our mold needs to conform to the shapes that we made in the previous class, the overmold shapes, right? So we're going to make that happen using the combine tool. So right now, I'm going to need to use the other bodies that I had previously hidden with my isolate command. So I'm going to right click on whichever body or component you chose to isolate initially, you have to use that same body or component to unisolate things. So if I right-click on this body mold component that I used to isolate and get rid of all the clutter here, now where it's previously said isolate, now I have the unisolate option. So now it's turned all those bodies back on. And that's my mold body. Here we go. And now I can go and find and make sure I can see my overmold and my thin plastic here because I'm going to use those things. So we're going to use the shape of our... I'm going to turn this off. We're going to use our existing body, our mold, and our thin plastic, our plastic here to subtract away the shape from the inside of this kind of mold that we're creating here. So from the Modify menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose counterintuitively the Combine option. So if I choose this Combine option as the target is going to be my mold body here. And I can spin down my mold body component and look in my bodies folder in there, and I can click on the body in the browser here if that's easier, if it gets kind of cluttered here. In fact, I'm going to do that same operation. So now the tool bodies here, I'm going to go ahead and change this from join to cut. And the tool bodies are going to be both my thin plastic and my overmold. So I'm going to cut those two objects away from the inside of this mold that I'm making here. Now these tools I do want to keep. So I don't want to delete my overmold and my thin plastic. We definitely want to have that keep tools checkbox highlighted here. And now I can say OK. Now, what might happen to you is you might have more than one body now here in your bodies folder inside of your mold. And if that's happening, let me show you. It's not happening for me, unfortunately. But if it's happening to you, I can show you how to view the inside of your mold, because that's kind of handy right now. We've got a hollow structure, and it'd be nice to be able to look at what the inside of that hollow structure looks like. So from the Inspect menu, we can choose the option that's called Section Analysis. So if I choose that Section Analysis option there, I'm going to go up and find that body, or that, not that body, that construction plane that we used to split our mold in half, and I'm going to choose that as the plane that I'm viewing here, as the face that I'm using to cut it in half, and I'm going to say OK. Oh, what just happened? Inspect, Section Analysis. Oh, you know what? That's because I already did this, and I had my section analysis turned off. All right. So now we've got a section analysis here. Oh, and we've got interesting things going on. All right. And I'm going to use that same trick that I did to get rid of all the junk except for the mold body that I'm working on. So I'm going to right-click on my mold body component, and I'm going to choose Isolate. So now I get rid of all the extraneous stuff. And I do indeed have weird geometry going on in the inside here, so I'm glad that I'm looking at this. Only it's not showing me I have two bodies because they're really connected. And it's all because of the opening in my tool here. So for now, I'm going to choose to ignore that that they're all connected. Hopefully that won't come back to bite me in the butt in a couple of minutes here. If you've got just random floating bodies that you can turn off and on, if you've got multiple bodies in your bodies folder after subtracting it away, and is that going to be thick enough? Well, we're about to find out. All right. So now I'm going to turn off my section analysis. So I'm back to looking at the whole thing again. Now let's split our body up, our mold body, so into its individual mold parts. So in order to do that, first I'm going to subtract away the front. So the part of the mold front that's going to break away. And the part of the mold front that's going to break away is going to be based on, I'm going to unisolate. Oh, no, apparently that wasn't what I used to isolate. This is what I used to isolate. I'm going to unisolate my mold body, my body mold, excuse me. I'm even going to, I'm not going to do that. All right, so from the Modify menu, I'm going to choose this option that is Split Body. Now, the body that I'm obviously going to split is my mold body, my body mold, excuse me, and it's the body in my body mold component that I called mold. And the splitting tool that we are going to use, I'm going to turn off or hide my body mold component because the surface that I want to use to split this body mold is going to be is it the inside surface? It's the surface of the front of my opening of my tool here. So this surface is kind of raised up, and this surface is that lower down. This is my overmold furthest out surface, and this is my thin plastic furthest out surface. I think that's the surface that I want there. And now I can turn back on. Oh, that's not the body. Yeah, no, that's the body. It's the component. All right, now I can turn that back on, and I can say, extend splitting tools is good. I'm going to say OK. And now in theory, yes. All right, so now you'll know that you did that right if you end up with two bodies, and when you turn off one of them, so this body here represents the kind of the front of my front flange there. If when you turn off that body, you can see through to your mold there. So I can see through my mold to my actual tool. If you cannot see through to your actual tool, when you're going to need to go back again, if I right-click and say Edit this feature, you'll need to check and make sure that you tried using a different splitting tool. So you want the splitting tool that you use to be kind of the one that cuts through and reveals all of the mold on the inside of your the front of your tool there. We're going to go a couple minutes late. Is that okay for you guys? Cool. All right. So we'll do that. Thank you. I try not to take up more than an hour of your Mondays, but we're going to do that same operation to the back here. So, in fact, here I've got a mold. I should probably name this mold front, just so I don't go ahead and get confused, because we're going to have lots of mold parts, 6 of them to be exact. I'm going to do that same operation in the back here. So I'm going to come and grab my modify and split body. The body that I'm going to split is my mold body inside of my body mold component. If I could only name things more confusingly, that would be great. So, and then the splitting tool that we want to use is the back surface of our tool. So the back surface of my tool, I left all one homogeneous overmolded glory. So I left it in its phenomenal overmolded glory. There's no detail back there, so it's easy for me to pick which surface it is. And now if I say OK, now, yep, now I can do my double checking there so I can see, oh, I've done that right here. And I can name this my back mold. All right, and now I can turn off my back mold, and I've got my front mold hidden as well. Oh boy. All right, so now we're going to split up the remainder of our body. We're going to use our flanges that we made here. So if I, from my modify menu again, if I choose to split the body, or split body, and I choose our mold body as the body we're splitting, and now this time my splitting tool isn't going to be a flat face. It's going to be one of our flanges, one of our two flanges that we made, the flange surfaces that we made in order to make our flanges thick here. This is the reason why we made them thicken symmetrically. So now, when I choose to split this body on that flange, I don't think I want to extend my splitting tools here. It should work just like that. Error. I got an error. All right, so let's try that again. Modify, split body. That's the body I'm splitting. I'm going to choose my flange there. This time I'm going to choose to extend my splitting tools. It'll make us more work later, but if this is the only way that it will work, and for me it wouldn't work any other way, so we're going to roll with that. So now I've got a split going through here, and now I'm going to do that again with the other surface that I had down here. So the other flange surface that I created, that was the lower flange surface, which should be called flange 2. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and from my modify menu, choose to split a body. Now here you got to be kind of careful because we've split our body in a weird way, so we got to click the right body to split. I'm going to choose to split this body because our goal here is we're segmenting away the kind of the side here of our mold here. The side here of our mold here. That makes sense. All right. I'm going to extend my splitting tools again. Actually, I'm going to try not to and see if it gives me the same error. Yep, won't let me do it. All right, so you really got to extend your splitting tools. Flange 2, extend splitting tools. I'm going to say OK. All right, so now we've got one side of our molds here. This body here, this shape, is a completed shape. So I can rename that to like right side mold, and I can hide it. So once I hide things, I know, like, all right, I'm done with them. I don't got to touch them again. Now, actually, I wonder if we can, if it'll let us if it'll let us mirror over these splits. So let me try that. So I'm going to find that mirror, that construction plane that I was using as my mid plane. Make sure I know where that's at. I'm going to choose the mirror command. I'm going to mirror features. I don't know if it's going to let me do this, but the two features that I'm going to mirror are the two split bodies that I just did. And the mirror plane is going to be, oh, it might work. Nope. All right, so we'll just mirror over my two surfaces. So I'm going to go back to the surface workspace. I'm going to choose from the create menu. I'm going to choose to mirror. And then instead of features, I'm mirroring bodies. We're going to mirror the surface bodies. So those two flanges that we just used and that we drew initially at the very beginning of class here, we're going to mirror those over the center. We probably could have mirrored those initially and then chose to thicken them, and then we wouldn't have needed to do it now, but just order of operations, we did not do that. All right, so now I've got these two more flanges over here, and now I can use those two flanges to cut apart the remainder of this mold body, this body mold. So I'm going to go back to my solid workspace. From the modify menu, I'm going to choose to split the body. I'm going to split this section of my mold here because I'm going to use this kind of top flange here. The flange that I'm using is that guy right there. I'm going to choose to extend my splitting tools. And I'm going to say OK. So I think I've got one more mold part sectioned off. But I've got a lot of extra bodies here, and we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. So I'm just going to name this mold top. I'm going to hide it so I know that that's good to go. After I named it and I hit it, and now I just need to do that operation one last time from the modify menu. I'll choose to split the body. The body that I'm splitting is for me it's called mold 1, but it's this last little piece that I need to cut up here. And the flange that I'm going to use is this kind of lower flange there. Again, we're extending our splitting tools. And then I'm going to say OK. And now it looks like, yeah, this is the left side mold, because I called my other one right side mold. All right, so the last thing that we need to do here is kind of the remainder of our mold bodies. Some of these we won't need, and some of them we need to join back together. So because I had to extend my splitting tools, we've kind of cut up our bottom mold in weird ways. So I'm going to isolate my mold body component one more time, just so we get rid of all the clutter and you see all the excess here. Oh, is that connected? I hope not. All right, so now I know I can kind of see the parts that I need to join back together. So from the modify menu, if I choose combine, now you can just kind of visually inspect. So I need to join this to this. Oop, I don't want to cut. I want to join those two things together, and then I'll have kind of a complete mold bottom. I don't want to keep the tools because I'm joining here, so I want to join them both together and not keep the individual tools that made them up. And now this is my mold bottom. I'm going to hide that. So now the rest of these parts, these were parts that were they were inside of my mold. They were actually inside of my tool as well. So I'm going to turn back on for illustration. I'm going to unisolate, and I'm going to turn back on my section analysis. So we can see here that this, because I extended out the front and the back of my body mold component so far, that they went inside of my actual tool, in the cavity of my tool. So they kind of got stuck in the inside of there. So they're easy to turn off. If I find back my mold body component, if I isolate that again. So now there are just some bodies that I need to get rid of. Now, I would hesitate before I deleted things. In fact, I try to get people to shy away from clicking on the delete button. Because Fusion is parametric, things depend on each other for existence. You know, if you go back and delete something that you currently have is depending on, then the thing that you currently have might not exist anymore. So instead of delete, what I encourage people to do, so I'm just going to go and find all the mold bits that are still on, that are still visible here, because I went through and turned off the ones that I needed. I turned their visibility off. So the ones that I can see that have the little eyeball next to them are the ones I don't need. If you right click, instead of delete, if you choose remove, this is always, always, always a better option than delete, because it doesn't delete them retroactively in your timeline down here. It goes ahead and puts some new icons in your timeline at the bottom of your parametric layout, I guess you could say. So you could always go back in time to before you removed something, and if something is based on a thing you removed, it still kind of exists. It's just kind of not showing it to you. So I would encourage people to choose that as an option. So now if I turn on, like for example, my left side, we can see the geometry from the inside. If I turn on the top, my mold top, that's where the real moneymaker is going to be. That's where the real payoff is, right in there. So now we've got some nice flanges. In reality, we probably want to put some holes in these flanges and fasten them together with fasteners. But especially for alignment, you're going to need to fasten these together with fasteners for alignment. But if I turn on all of these mold bodies, in fact, you know what? Let's try to fix one, because I noticed. Is it the bottom? Mold front. Yeah, I think it's my bottom. My mold bottom has got some issues here. It's connected in it looks like it's just one spot. Yeah, it's connected in one spot, and that spot is probably right up here at the front. Oh, it's connected by the tiniest little bit of nothing. Just this little sliver down here. So I'm going to try to subtract that away by using one of its existing surfaces. So if I choose to split a body, and I'll split this body, and then if I choose as my splitting tool this surface right here, which is kind of like that, I don't know, inside of what the actual part of my mold surface that I want is, and extend the splitting tools, is that going to work? Nope, I got an error. So if I choose to, gosh, how am I going to get rid of you? How am I going to get rid of you? I'm going to, I think this is the opening where my roller is. Let's try that again. In fact, except let's not extend the splitting tools. Will that work? Modify, split body. This is my surface here. If I don't extend the splitting tools, it probably is not going to cut anything because the splitting tools need to extend in order for them to cut. What if I need a surface that goes from here all the way over to the other side there. I wonder if I can use existing geometry to create a, actually, you know what? I've got a surface already. I've got a surface that does hopefully exactly that. If I go to my bodies, my body of my tool, if I unisolate and I turn off those things, I think I have, yeah, I've got a surface already that should, in theory, cut that top off. So let's do that. So now I can choose the split body option. I can choose that tool, and then as the splitting tool, I'm going to use the main body that we made everything from. There are Thicken that we were thickening everything from, and in theory, damn. Let's try that again, because is this main body? Did I cut away? I did cut away. I cut away that surface. But I have the sketch still. I have the sketch that was the front and the sketch that was the back. And because I have those two sketches, let's try this. Let's go back and make our body mold. Again, terrible name, Carl. Our body mold is our active component. And if I come over here to the surface workspace, if I choose the loft option, and I pick the line that represents the front of that tool, and I pick the line that represents the back of that tool, and now I have a, actually that might do it, but I'm going to go the extra mile here. I'm going to choose, I got to turn on my path. Yeah, if I turn on my path, and now this time I'm going to choose it as a center line. That didn't work at all. I'm choosing the wrong center line. That. There we go. So I chose that same path that I chose initially, that I made, probably the second drawing we made in this class. And now, because I had my body mold as my active component, that surface exists right here in my body mold component. I can turn on, let's isolate down to our body mold component again. And I can turn on my mold bottom. And now I'll have a nice surface that I can use to split those bodies, and I don't have to extend the tool, and it doesn't give me any errors. All right, so now this is another body that I can just go, hey, remove. Oh, somehow it didn't work. I've got a little tiny sliveret somehow that's touching somehow, some way. I don't know how that's possible. Is this it right here? Yeah. So somehow my bodies are still touching each other. But we're gonna, I got a little tiny sliveret that's touching right in there. But we're gonna move on. I'm sure there's a way for us to do this, but we've already run late, and we're gonna leave it for now and call that good. Yeah. That's a problem for tomorrow me, as I say at work sometimes. And did you guys have a problem too with like random little bits inside of your shape, Harold? Sure. What was your totally different problem? Do you mind if I share your screen with the world? Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, if you go present. Cool. All right. All right. So you just need a different surface. You need the surface that you clicked on to split that away. It just wasn't far enough in on the inside of your mold, so you just need a surface that is further in, if that makes sense. Okay, here. You mean you chose names that make sense? Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, you can, if you hide your oh, maybe do the section analysis trick. Yeah, do it from the side though, because I want to see how if they're connected, I guess, right? There you go. Choose like this, the side. There you go. There you go. And then you can just push that arrow in. Cool. And now that's probably far enough. So now if you turn off your front, there you go. Oh yeah. So your connection point there that you've got hanging out is like the opening. And so now I bet if you did you cut away the opening on your surface as well? Yeah, so I'm curious if, yeah. Yeah, so you'll just have to use the original surface body from your body component. Like the original surface body that we lofted. That looks like that might... there you go. So is that... Yeah, the very innermost shape. Yeah, the innermost surface. Is there a hole in the bottom of that? Yeah. Yeah, turn off your... There you go. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a hole in the bottom of that, right? Yeah, so you should be able to use that surface as a... Yeah, use that surface to split away your mold. I would use that whole, instead of that face, use that whole surface body. Yeah. There you go. And now if you say, okay, now in theory, oh, you still don't have two bodies. Yes. Right. I was hoping you'd have like an inner floating bit that you'd be able to turn off. But, you know, it could be that as you kind of continue on and go forward, like cutting up your side flanges, that it'll become that, like, that inner part that's kind of floating on the inside of your mold will kind of just disappear. Or you'll be able to delete them as you cut up the side parts of your mold. Yeah. All right, cool. And, you know, as usual, like, email me or shoot me a text during the week, and I'm happy to jump on a call, and we'll see if we can figure it out further. All right, cool. Thanks for staying a little late with me today. But we'll see you guys next week. Next week, I think we're going to move on to a new project. So, well, 5 classes is enough. You're only allowed to do more than 5-part series if you're making a donut. Yes, because Blender, exactly, yeah. If you've not watched the 27-part series that is making a donut in Blender, you should do so. It's great. And so, yeah, anyway. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you, guys. All right. Have a good one.